Welcome to Miss Rose's Story Time. I hope you all are doing well. We live on some acres, so we're able to go outside in the back of our house in our orchard, and we're far from people. We live in the country, so we're able to take advantage of that. I know not everybody has that opportunity. My thoughts are with everyone during this time. And I'm a woman of prayer and faith, and so let's begin our story. We're on Carry On Mr. Bowditch by Jean Lee Latham. I encourage you to read 30 minutes every day at least, and because 30 minutes improves your reading skills. 20 you stay the same, less than 20 it depletes. So I encourage you to read 30 minutes every day. You can act it out as a family, what you're reading. You can talk about it. You can guess what you think is going to happen next. Reading is very important. If you can read, you can learn to read and comprehend. You can learn about how to do it. Sorry. You can learn about anything. I remember my husband changed a engine block in our vehicle by reading. It was before Google, and I remember reading how to make balloon animals. I used to do those kind of things. So we are on chapter 22 on page 217. Science and Sumarta. Dr. Holyoke went with Nate to see the crew and get word of the John. There was no doubt about the loss. Polly was waiting for them when they returned. She knew what rankled in Nate's mind beyond the loss and the disappointment. Don't think about what Zach Shelby said, dear, and about books. Who's Zach Shelby? Dr. Holyoke sighed. He speaks for a lot of men, Polly. I'm not saying there are many as mean-spirited as he is, thank heaven, but there are hundreds, thousands who don't believe in book sailing. You know, seafaring is a lot like medicine. On the one hand, superstition and old wives' tales. On the other hand, the scientists, trying to solve the puzzles and find the answers. And all through the ages, men believed the superstitions and doubted the scientists. Natural, I suppose. You believe that you grow up believing. It's hard to change. You can't remember, Polly, when we first started inoculating. There we go, for the smallpox. I used the Q word. Sometimes if you're not sure how to pronounce a word, there will be words by it that can help you figure out what that word is. So, inoculating for smallpox. He shook his head. Wonder to me I wasn't lynched. Inoculation was risky, but not as bad as the epidemics of smallpox. Then vaccination came along. It was safer, but people raised almost as much fuss. All my life I felt as though I made 3 steps forward with science and got dragged back 2 steps by the ignorance and superstitions of mankind. And every time a doctor loses a patient, no matter why, it gives science another setback. And every time a ship is lost, Nate added, it gives the scientific navigation a setback too. Men blame the books. They've been right to blame them sometimes. There have been errors in the books, and when you depend on a book and it makes a mistake, you have been safer not depending on it. But your book isn't going to have mistakes, Polly said, when men depend on it. Nate smiled. It will take a long time to convince them. Dr. Holyoke nodded. Polly protested. But after what the East Indian Society said, Dr. Holyoke smiled warily. They ought to convince all America. But Salem, a prophet is without honor in his own country, you know. What if England accepts the book? That would convince even Salem, wouldn't it? Nate laughed, but shook his head. You could never convince an Englishman that anything out of America was better than something made in England. Never? Polly asked. Not a chance, Nate told her. Late in March, Dr. Holyoke broke them to Newbury paper. Listen to this, he read. To the honor of the scientific knowledge of Mr. Nathaniel Bowditch of Salem, Mass., we are informed that one copy of his New American Practical Navigator was sold in London to two nautical booksellers by Mr. Blunt of this town for 200 guineas, and an edition of 6,000 copies is now in press. Moore's Practical Navigator has depreciated very much in that country, owing to the numerous errors which have been fatal to mariners. Polly's eyes glowed. There, Nate! Who said England would never accept an American book? I guess the world will believe you now, maybe, Nate said. If I'd been a sailing master myself in full command of a ship. He said no more, but early in the summer he came home with something on his mind. He had been asked to go as captain, supercargo, and part owner of a voyage to Samarta and the Pepper Islands. I had a long talk with Mr. Lawrence today, he told Polly. He has his eye on a new vessel, the Putnam. Well, Polly? Polly caught her breath and smiled. Master and supercargo both? Captain Bowditch, you'll be a busy man. Nate hugged her. Bless you, Polly. He soon found he was a busy man. Preparations for the voyage kept him running here, there, and everywhere. In August, he had to make a trip to Boston. I'm sailing in Miller's sloop, he said, lots more pleasant than the stagecoach in August. I hope you keep your sea legs again, Polly said. Have a good trip. I shan't be long, Nate promised. Miller promised, too. I'll have him back in short order, Mrs. Bowditch. And they made the trip down to good time. But the morning they were ready to leave Boston, they were beclaimed. Miller was disgusted. Out of all the infernal luck, he growled. I promised your wife I'd have you back in short order. Now look at me, beclaimed. On the sudden impulse, Nate said, It suits me fine. Today is commencement day at Harvard. I've always intended to go. Miller eyed him suspiciously. You're not just saying that to make me feel good. No, Nate told him. I've always wanted to go. But when he sat alone in the crowd and watched the fresh-faced boys getting their degrees, he knew it had been a mistake to come. It only brought back a heartache that was better forgotten. Harvard, men. In spite of everything, the buried memories rose up to nag him. Again, he was a boy of 12, sitting at the breakfast table, filled with bubbly joy because he was going to go back to school, he thought. Again, he saw the frown of his father's face and the tired shadows under Mary's eyes. Again, he saw the paper that had sealed his fate for 9 years, Nathaniel Bowditch indentured. From the platform, President Willard's voice interrupted Nate's thoughts. He heard a name that sounded something like Bowditch, dressed up in Latin. Some relative, Nate wondered. When the ceremonies had ended, Nate walked slowly out into the sun again. He'd been a fool to come. He straightened and tried to throw off a depression. Forget it, he told himself. Behind him, someone called, Nathaniel Bowditch! He turned. The years had whitened the man's hair, but Nate recognized him, the Mr. Morris who had offered him a chance to tutor his children if he could have been free to leave the Chanderley. Mr. Morse gripped his hand. "Congratulations, Mr. Bowditch." He put his arm around a young man's shoulders. "My son John," he said. "John, this is Mr. Bowditch, the man I was telling you about, the man who got a degree from Harvard without ever setting foot in the classroom." "What?" Nate said. "Didn't you hear them award it this morning, Nathaniel Bowditch?" I suppose I was thinking of something," Nate said. In a happy daze, he listened while Mr. Morse talked. In a happy daze, he smiled and answered the boy's question. "Nathaniel Bowditch, Harvard man." That night when he turned in, he lay smiling into the darkness. This, he told himself, was the proudest day of his life. He had been home in Salem a few days when the letter came from Harvard. Cambridge, August 31, 1802. Sir, I have the pleasure of informing you officially that on commencement day, the 25th instant, the degree of Master of Arts was conferred on you. It gives me further pleasure to acquaint you that this degree was unanimously voted by the corporation of the university and unanimously confirmed by the overseers. I am, sir, with much esteem, your very humble servant, Joseph Willard, President of Harvard College. Nathaniel Bowditch, A.M. Polly said, "Oh, Nate, if only we could paint that on the button. Captain Bowditch, A.M., commanding." Nate chuckled and hugged her. Bless Polly. He hadn't thought about anything could make him happier than he had been on the 25th, but Polly had a way of sharing things. "Come along up to my study," he said. "I have papers to sort. Work goes so much faster when you're there." They were working it that night in his study when someone hammered on the front door. They heard a hoarse shout, "Ahoy the ship!" Polly jumped to her feet. "Something's happened. Someone's been splicing the main brace," Nat gasped. "I'll quiet him." He raced down the stairs, but not before more hammering fairly shook the house. "Ahoy, ship!" "I'll ahoy you," Nate muttered and flung open the door. "Just what the— Lem Harvey! Come in, man, come in!" And Nate was bellowing as loud as Lem, "Polly, come down and see who's here." Lem crushed Nate's hand and pounded his back and bellowed with cheerful profanity. "I knew there was one man in Salem who wouldn't think I was a ghost." Nate wiggled his fingers to see if they were still worked. "You're flesh and blood, all right, and bone and muscle. Come in, man, and sit down." Lem was too excited to sit down. He grinned at Polly and paced the floor as he told his story. "When the Betsy struck and we launched the boats, I headed straight out from land." Nate said, "Good man." "There was 6 of us when we started." Lem stopped for a moment. "I guess if the storm had let up so we could have told where we were, but for 2 days we didn't do anything but fight the sea and bail that boat. Then fog." He stood a moment, his shoulders slumped, staring into the past. "Man, were you ever lost in a fog? That's when they started cracking up. The first one." Polly shuddered. Lem glanced at her and then skipped. "Well, the upshot of it was that I was picked up by the Julius, bound for Samarta. What a journey that was. Everything that could happen to one ship happened to the Julius. But when we got to Samarta, we did all right. The captain really got himself a cargo of pepper. All I got this." He wiped out a shot dagger with an ivory handle and a wavy blade. "What in the world?" Polly asked. "It's a Creese, ma'am, a Malager dagger. They got all sizes and shapes, long, short, wavy, straight, but this is the one that works fastest. I was an anchor watch when I sort of felt something behind me. Didn't hear a thing. The way those brown devils can, begging your pardon, ma'am, can swarm up the cable. Well, anyhow, he got it instead of me, and then I got it, if you understand what I mean. I grabbed it, and Nate interrupted hastily. You say the captain did all the rights in Samarta? A good cargo of pepper? Yes, sir. Would you like to go to Samarta again? Lem stared. Me? No, sir. One is enough. If you ask me, one is too often. Because of the way they fight? Polly asked. Lem shrugged. Oh, that's not the half of it. You see, ma'am, Nate interrupted quickly again. I'd like to talk to you about the business end of it, Lem. Lem shook his head. I don't know much about that part of it. All I know is that the captain and his clerk went ashore every day there was trading to do. Rest of us, we stayed on board and kept our fingers crossed and they'd get back, you see? Again, Nate tried to haul him around on another track. How was the scenery? Lem shrugged again. Full of trees, with a betel chewy melee behind each one. Remember the first time we saw a fellow chewing betel, and when he spit, it looked like blood? Man, you'd think the fellow's throat was cut. But they don't generally go for the throat with these daggers. They rip right into. It was no use, Nate said. I'm sorry you wouldn't like to make another trip to Samarita, Lem. I'm leaving soon for there myself, commanding the Putnam. A grin split Lem's face. You? Why didn't you say so? If you're going, I'll go too. I'll sign on it as anything from second mate to cook. Polly looked at him puzzled. But you said, Lem's gesture tossed aside. That was just talk. I was just spinning yarns. Samarita's fine, pretty country, really pretty. And the people, Polly asked. Lem scratched his head. The people? He looked at the dagger in his hand. I'll bet they're nice too, ma'am, when a fellow gets to know them. Now take this fellow that I got the crease from. Probably wasn't anything personal about it. He didn't really have anything against me. It was just for a moment he was stumped. Then he grinned. Maybe he just run amok. You know, they do that. All at once, they just get tired of living and they go crazy. They start out with a hoop and a holler, knifing left and right, till he stopped again. Look here, I'm keeping you folks up too late. He ambled to the door. Remember, Captain Bowditch, I'm signing on the Putnam. Yes, sir. Now I'll clear for home, so you can get some sleep. He grinned at them, saluted with his dagger, and was gone. Polly shrugged and hid her face in her hands. So we can get some sleep, he says. Oh, Nate! Now you mustn't mind the things Lem said. All sailors. It wasn't what he said, Polly told him. It was what he skipped. But I'm glad he wants to go with you. Yes, Nate agreed. He's a master hand with the guns, and when I mean he's all around. Nathaniel Bowditch, Polly was stern. Don't you start skipping things too, Nate promised. In November, a week before the Putnam was to sail, a boy stopped with a message for Nate. Dr. Holyoke says to tell you he has it ready, sir. Polly looked worried. Is something wrong, Nate? No, just some supplies from the Putnam. Come along with me. Dr. Holyoke was waiting for them. Polly smiled at him. Dr. Holyoke, you're amazing. You could pass for 50. Dr. Holyoke said, bosh, but he grinned. Thing that keeps me fit is keeping busy. I'll probably die with my boots on. Doctor and sailing masters. Humph. We're here. It is, Nate. He opened a small wooden chest, some of everything you might need. Polly gasped, all that medicine? Is Nate sick? No, child, Dr. Holyoke chuckled. It's for his crew. When a ship's off sounding, the captain's on his own. Doctor, lawyer, merchant, chef. He looked down into the chest. His eyes twinkled. Plenty of jalap there, Nate. Best thing in the world if a man tries to soldier on you and play sick. Good dose of jalap. Don't think you'll have any trouble, though. Good men. I don't know about old Chad's grandson, Corey. Little skittery yet. Not enough keel there, or something. He'll probably won't He'll probably work out, though. Polly said, Nate's depending a lot on Lem. I understand Lem's a good man with the guns. Dr. Holyoke nodded. Yes, and when you're in Cisteria, humph. Now, let's me see. Anything I forgot? Jolette, Pervin, Bark, and the door opened, and Amanda Harvey stumbled into the room, panting. She needed the doctor right away. Lem had broken his leg. Ah, now he's probably not going to be able to go. Wow, that was an interesting chapter. Okay, we're going to have 23 on Monday. I take Sundays off. So I hope you take care and just stay at peace. And if you're a praying person, pray. And I believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, the great God of Abraham, Jacob, and the Lord of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, so take care. God bless y'all. Peace be with you. Thank you for coming to Miss Rose's Story Time. Please like, share, subscribe. Thank you. Bye-bye.